Hello everybody and welcome to our very first Educator webinar for 2022. It's lovely to see so many people here and we appreciate you joining us from wherever you're joining today. We are hosting today's webinar from QUT in Brisbane or Meanjin, which is on Turrbal and Yagara country. And we just have an acknowledgement to country video that we'd like to play to begin today.
QUT acknowledges the First Nations owners of the lands on where we gather today and pay our respects to the elders, laws, customs and creation spirits of this country. For thousands of years, the First Nations owners have gathered to share their knowledge and stories. We pay our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and acknowledge the important role they play within our communities. We recognise their long and continuing connection to country, the lands, winds and waters throughout Australia. We recognise that these lands have always been places of teaching, researching and learning.
Thank you for that. And as always, we'd love for you to be able to share your acknowledgement to country with us as well. So we recognise that people are joining us from all over Australia. And if you'd like to just pop a quick introduction into the chat to let us know who you are and where you're from, and you can make your acknowledgement to the traditional owners and custodians of the lands that you're working from today as well. That would be wonderful. Just as you're busy doing that, we wanted to just introduce the PCC4U project team who's with you here today. So my name is Sharon Wetzik. I'm one of the Learning and Development Coordinators for PCC4U and the PEPA program. And with me today is Linda Carnew, who's our Senior Research Associate. And she is in the busy behind the scenes webinar seat today, making all of the things start and stop when we want them to. So thank you, Linda. And we will be joined later on in the session by Kylie Ash, who's our National Project Manager, and also Karen Wynn, who's our new Learning and Development Coordinator as well. So welcome to you all. Thank you to those of you who are putting your introductions in the chat. It's really nice to hear where you're from and to see that in there. So really lovely. So we're going to start off our session today. We wanted to have a look at some of the work on imposter syndrome and what we can learn from that in our everyday teaching practice in palliative care. So we asked Sue Cosgrove, our PEPA National Manager, who's done some recent work on this, to do a presentation for us. And by the wonders of modern technology, Sue is actually in 3 places at one time today. So she has recorded a presentation for us. We're going to play that short video soon so you can hear what Sue has to say. And I just encourage you, as you listen to the presentation, there's a few points where you can stop and reflect, maybe make some notes, have a think about whether the content that she's talking about applies in your setting. And we will have some conversation about that later on. So,
Hi, my name is Sue Cosgrove and I'm the National PEPA Manager. And today I wanted to take a moment of your time to talk about this idea of imposter syndrome. I'm coming to you today from Turrbal and Yagara lands to present this. And these are my details if you'd like to follow up further with me after today to talk more about this idea. So what I want to talk to you today is about this concept of what is imposter syndrome? What does it look like? Reflecting to see if I haven't, or if I've seen it in others too. Strategies for managing imposter syndrome. And also the link to the article that can really give you more information about this. And possibly you've had time before today to have a look at that article as well. Really important to look a bit further and learn more. So let's start with the fun stuff. So what is this idea of imposter syndrome? So here we go. It's a very real and specific form of self-doubt. It's quite hard. It can result in emotional paralysis for people. It can limit people achieving their fullest potential. How does that happen though? How do we get to this place where we may suffer imposter syndrome. And it might be that you've had a lot of pressures to succeed in your life. Some study was quite clear and found that people who come from first generation universities, like, so no one in their family before them has been to university, they're the first people to go to university, there is a high expectation on them. So they feel quite burdened by that, which can lead to this idea of them achieving and then feeling that they're a fraud, that, they've achieved this goal, but they don't really believe in themselves. Okay, and that can come from high external pressures. Those parental mixed messages that have come along the way, overpraise, criticism, that can be quite debilitating as an adult as well. Then as an adult, if you've had rapid success in your career, that can also create unrealistic expectations, because you can't keep rapidly climbing. It's not possible. Roles that you have high output expectations. So potentially, you've been, asked to achieve 16 hours of work in an 8-hour day, continually and ongoing, unrelentingly. And those unreasonable goals. So our leaders and the people who set us up in our workplace have some pretty unreasonable goals there that we're unable to make change to, and we're feeling a little bit out of control. So there's some of the reasons that are identified in the literature for why people suffer imposter syndrome. But it really does come down to that, is it something I've grown up with? Is it nature? Or, is it who I am? Is it the way we are in my group? Or is it the way I've been raised, that nurturing component? Is that occurred to me? Or sometimes as adults, we self-impose this. We start creating unrealistic expectations for ourselves because we perceive ourselves differently from what is reality too. So, it is really important in self-care as health practitioners that we do reflect on these sorts of learnings and we go, is this me? Have I created this for myself? And what does it look like? So we've actually had this discussion in the PEPA program and in the PEPA mentoring program in particular, where we've talked about this idea of, imposter syndrome, and then how did some people in a group of people feel that they might have ended up with this idea of imposter syndrome, where they just don't believe that they've got the skill set to do the job they're doing. And so these are some of the points that were highlighted in that previous discussion group. And they were all health professionals in that previous discussion group as well. So it was really interesting to see that, they felt that there was a lot of expectations from the organisation, from patients and families, which really led to that ability for them to self-doubt and go, I can't do this, I can't do all of this. So, and also that idea of tired and too much going on in life. So what are the effects that you might see with imposter syndrome? If you don't understand it and you've not reflected on it and you've not looked out for it in yourself, what might be some of the effects? Well, the literature once again has highlighted all of this and points out professional paralysis, decreased success, loss of confidence, it's hard, a loss of personal motivation. So that inability to want to get up and keep doing what you do all of the time. And that's, and we can see evidence of that in healthcare, where we see a lot of people walking away from the profession, feeling stuck, and starting to see some reactive behaviours in the workplace too, which can be quite maladaptive and can actually lead to poor cultural sort of feelings in an organisation as well, when we're starting to see a lot of it. So having a look at this list, has anyone take another moment of reflection and think, have I felt this personally? Have I suffered something here? Do I have to think a little bit more about this? So it's really good to just take a moment to go, I think I might have something in here. I wonder what more I can sort of do about this. What can I learn about this? So these are some of those reactive behaviours that you may see in someone with imposter syndrome, or you may have suffered yourself. And look, this is the wonderful thing about imposter syndrome and taking time to reflect on yourself is going, have I got some perfectionistic behaviours? Or do I work with someone who might have those? That point of immobility, just so overwhelmed that you're pretty much stopping because you don't know where to go. Burnout, that's a really significant point in our profession. Aggression, people just lashing out and getting upset, potentially just yelling, you know. Passive aggression is part of that too. So that, you know, that meanness that sometimes you may feel that you do, or you may have been on the, you may have received that your way. Some bullying behaviours, they are also reactive behaviours, because when people are bullying, it is definitely because they're feeling in some way overwhelmed and threatened. So it's really important to notice that. In some of our leaders, we'll see them micromanaging us. And so, you know, that's another call out there that we're, you know, this person is feeling really threatened and they've got a lot going on, and they're not feeling that they're achieving what they need to be achieving. So they're pressing down on the people beneath them so that they can feel like they're achieving something. In a team, if we have a lot of people with imposter syndrome, we might see some poor team performance, particularly if there is a leader who is suffering imposter syndrome who's leading that team, because that will have an effect on all staff, and the subsequent result could be high staff turnover, which is, you know, something that we do see in some sectors even more so. And once again, when we were talking about this in a group session with a bunch of health professionals, we went, you know, what did they notice when they noticed these sorts of behaviours in others? You know, what did people do? You know, and it was really interesting to hear people say, well, we leave them alone. They're scary people. They're too complicated. We just let them be. Now, look, I know that this happens because we had a great discussion about it in a group. Yeah, my question is that caring? If we do nothing and we just let something be, is that caring? Other great things that people highlighted was asking if people needed anything, any support, asking that person if they're okay, having conversations, checking in, and also thinking about that idea of self-care culture as well. Another group actually had an incident where some imposter syndrome had occurred, and so they had done some team building exercises to bring their team together, because they had that incident where they'd had some high turnover and their leader had been removed from the organisation. So they had an opportunity to rebuild and found some effectiveness in that as well. And then in the group, we got to talking about, well, people who notice those reactive behaviours in themselves, like they had noticed some of those perfectionistic behaviours, they'd noticed that they were burning out. And so in the group, we talked about, well, what do you do when you feel like that? What, you know, how do you manage that? And it was really interesting, because in that group, they talked to their mentors, you know, and they practiced some self-compassion. They realised they were stressed, needed a break. Some did exercise and yoga, spending time in the garden, time with family, pets. They took time out to do the things that nurtured their spirit and that they loved, which, you know, was really, it was beautiful to be with that group and hear that. And one of them actually highlighted that he had actually burnt out, and he wouldn't encourage others to do it. But he said from the experience of burning out, though, he did learn a lot about himself, and he feels he's much more self-aware now. And he said he knows he is 100% guaranteed sure it will never happen again, because he knows what to look for now, and he's very self-aware. Reflecting, journaling. Some people use the employee assistance program, which I found really interesting. Practicing gratitude, planning out your holiday strategically so people don't go without breaks. And I love that idea. But yeah, I know that COVID has made it quite difficult to, plan your leave out, because some people have had their leave calendars cancelled. So that makes it really difficult. And then, apologise, remove myself from the situation when I feel overwhelmed. And I think that's a really important thing to do. I know that requires a lot of transparency as a person, and it requires a bit of vulnerability to say, I've made a mistake here. Can I just walk away for a minute? And so there's some things that are a lot harder to think, a lot harder to do than you think. But I really like that. I thought that was really important to note. But the great thing is that in this article, it really gives us some strategies to think about how to address these imposter tendencies. So when we're seeing these reactive behaviours and we're doing those sorts of things, what can we do to minimise the outcome, to not burn out, to be well and healthy? And so here's some strategies that were researched from the literature, and it was this beautiful top point of giving it a name. Put a name to the feeling. When you're feeling overwhelmed, call it. Put your hand up. I'm overwhelmed right now. I need to walk away. I'm stressed at the moment. I need to, owning it. Placing a name on the feeling. One can move from feeling shame to placing it by placing the feeling in context. So really own that. And if these feelings are so common that a tool is developed to measure them, then these nagging feelings are certainly not uncommon. And so knowing I'm not alone in this, I know that in a group of people, certainly when we ran this session on imposter syndrome in Pepper, we really found that this was a common feeling. So other parts here, you can read this more thoroughly, and I would so encourage you to read this article as well. Really important to talk to mentors. Remember what you do well. Celebrate your success, people. Stop, really hold yourself in a positive regard. Don't talk yourself down negatively. Knowing that no one is perfect. And, looking at really keeping an eye on your thinking, how much are you sitting in a negative mindset versus a positive mindset? Understand that. And, if you're not happy with the way that your mind's setting, you can shift it. You can make change. It is actually possible. So these are wonderful points and strategies for really shifting and addressing those imposter tendencies that we might be noticing in ourselves. Remember, things are tough, but you are tougher. Okay, and if you'd like to develop more of your self and understanding of yourself as a professional presence in your working community, please feel free to join the Pepper Mentoring Hub. Every month we meet, we discuss a topic that helps you to focus on you as a mentor and as a positive presence in your community. And it's a great way to learn and develop more knowledge about yourself. I've created a link for you by tapping that picture just down the bottom here with the Mentoring Hub, but also if you've got this PowerPoint presentation, there's a link in the notes pages as well. Thanks for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you in the Pepper Mentoring Hub sometime. Goodbye.
So I think we can learn from that, and in terms of our approach to education in palliative care. We do, in our role here in the national project, talk to a lot of educators around the country who may be teaching palliative care in their units for the first time, or it may be something that they haven't practiced in and they've been asked to teach. So we do feel that, or we do hear about people who are feeling that that sort of self-doubt that comes in that imposter syndrome context. So I think we're going to have a bit more of an interactive conversation to follow now about ways that we can help build our own confidence in teaching in this context, as well as helping our students to be safe and have a safe learning experience for everybody. So before we start that part of the presentation, we just have a short poll that we'd like you to fill in, just to get a little bit of background about you and your teaching context. Okay, well, we might end the poll there, Linda, and just have a quick look. So we've got a reasonable mix of people. Some have been teaching for many years, some a few, some just starting, and a couple there that are not yet teaching. And how do you feel? I'm glad to see that nobody's in the terrified category. That would be hard, but I understand that there's some of you feel confident and comfortable, excited, nervous. That's all of that is, from what I understand, very normal. We have some people teaching in standalone palliative care units, some in an oncology context, and some in an aged care or ageing unit. And if you put other there, because we've missed out on finding that correct category, please post in the chat to let us know what kind of context you're teaching in, because we do often find that quite interesting to see what sorts of units people are working in palliative care. So okay, thank you, across various wards in the hospital. So yeah, just wanted to have a conversation now about as I said, how we can become comfortable in this space ourselves, and then also how we can encourage our students to be more comfortable. So I'm just going to share, hopefully you can see that on my screen now. So we're just thinking about, one of the first things we want to think about is, who are your learners? And we had a number of educators contribute to our webinar sessions last year, and just learned a few things from them about this, particularly in a university context, that most of their learners were young. Most of them didn't have a lot of life experience with dying and death, and they tended to have limited day-to-day contact with older people or those with serious illness. So just wanted to find out a bit from you about your learners and the kind of context that you're in. You can, if you'd like to, use the annotate tool on Zoom. So under your view options, you can find annotate, and then you can just either write something on there, write a comment about who your learners are. You can put a tick in the box. Naomi is all over it. Well done, first on the screen. So if these things apply in your context, give us a little stamp or a tick or something. If there's something else there that that doesn't fit, you can use the text tool and make a comment. So I'm guessing that we're finding, or it looks like we're finding, that those things sort of add up in most situations. Yep. And I think that from what we've heard from other educators, that needs to really be taken into consideration when we start talking about palliative care and start learning in this area, because there's perhaps a bit of reluctance sometimes in students. Good to see somebody's mentioned keen learners there. I think that's really good to hear. And you certainly will have, in any group, you'll have keen learners as well as those who may be reluctant, and those who may have had recent personal experience that is impacting on their desire and willingness to engage with that. Thank you for contributing to that. And the other thing we wanted to just have a think about is, in terms of your learners, how do they generally feel about learning palliative care? So again, you can do a little heart or a stamp, whichever zone. You may have a complete mix of people in all of those. Yep, so a broad range. Thank you. So some people might feel quite calm and focused and ready to learn this. Some might be not interested, not feeling like it's relevant to them. Some are worried. I see we've underlined worried. Depends on previous experience. Yep, that is true. And yes, that's a really important point, Claire, that we find, particularly with people who've had that really heavy load over the last 2 years, that they are over it, and you can get those kind of very upset and angry. So not a great learning space to be in if you're in that red zone. One of the ways, I see somebody's written unsure, so perhaps this could be a good tool to use to just gauge how people are feeling about the learning content. When you start a session, you can get them to comment or show a card colour or something to indicate how they're feeling about learning in this area, and then you'll be able to know what your mix of students is like. So I just wanted to take a little bit of time to go over some of the things we learned from our webinars last year. And one of the first webinars was with Anna Hatton from UQ Physiotherapy. She talked about this kind of topic in her presentation and how she gently scaffolds the learning so that people are given opportunity to learn at their level, and I guess have some content in the first year subjects, some content in the second year subjects, etc., so that it's gently scaffolded. She provides a lot of opportunities for people to ask questions and gives them a warning about potentially triggering content, and offers support as well all along the way, both at the beginning of the course and also as the students are moving through. So if you want to know more about that, I encourage you to go and have a look at our webinar 1 recording from last year. We also heard from Linda's work with QUT Nursing and their simulation program that it was very important to check in regularly with the students and really offer that ongoing support. Pre-briefing before a simulation, as we know, is particularly important, but regarding the potential emotional responses attached to this kind of content. Acknowledging that it is confronting and that it's not something we do in our everyday, and providing support and counselling services as well. So many of you will have organisational support services available, and they can be added into your unit outlines or particularly in this section of the content. Someone else we heard from later in the series was Bernie Bissett, who's at physiotherapy at the University of Canberra. And she talked about the importance of just remembering what it was like as a beginner practitioner and remembering your own experiences and how you felt around your first experiences of dying and what that was like and how it was learning about these things as well. She also emphasised the importance of remembering that students, reminding them that no matter where they work, in what context, they will encounter people with life-limiting illness. So they're not necessarily, in that situation where they don't need to know it. So that was important for her. Also being mindful of the diversity of experiences and the different views that people might have on dying and death, and providing a variety of ways for students to interact. We heard about this in some of our webinars, that educators were saying having to shift a lot of training to online. They found that some people were actually more inclined to be involved in conversation or group discussion if they were in a kind of anonymous forum or online where they could think about it. And if you wanted to have a look at that webinar 9 from last year, Bernie's showcases her work with the VoiceThread platform, which is something that she uses to encourage her students to interact with the content and interact with each other and share their experiences. Something we recommend as well is providing a bit of a content or trigger warning for students. So it might read something like this example on the screen. And you can include the facility or organisation support services that are available, and also the national services that are accessible 24 hours. So that can be helpful. Another thing we recommend is to just have some ways of introducing the topic to help people get comfortable and have some non-threatening kind of conversation around it. So we have prepared just a very quick game today of Would You Rather? So it's going to be a poll that comes up on your screen. Thanks, Linda. And just a couple of quick questions to see what you might think about these things. Yeah, almost nobody's going for the 1,000 cats so far. Not that I want to pressure anybody who's thinking that would be a better way to go. The tiger seems to be winning out. think that's about it being over quickly, right? A few people wine, a few people coffee. I feel like wine might just make me not remember it. Coffee might keep me awake. Oh, and interesting. More people would be, so far anyway, rather be a ghost than an animal. So you can imagine a quiz, little quiz like this, just at the start of a session might help students to have a little bit of fun and think about the topic, and it's a useful way to introduce this. We have a few other suggestions for how you might introduce conversations around dying and death, and certainly happy to share those if you're interested. We'll talk a little bit more about resources later in this webinar. Another thing that we found educators saying to us that they find important is to allow the students to determine how deep to go with the content. So students will have different levels of comfort with this content, and what we talk about is student-led engagement will enable the depth of learning that's right for each person. So we don't want to push people beyond their comfort zone. It might be that they can't consider topics like this at the moment because of a family situation or wherever they're at, but still providing them opportunities to engage to the depth that they feel comfortable is really important. So providing a range of activities is helpful, using case scenarios, different ways to provide responses, etc. And encouraging students to support each other online. So I think with Bernie's experience that I mentioned earlier with the VoiceThread platform, she was really encouraged to see her students reacting and responding to what people had commented in a really supportive and caring way. So I think that's really good too, to encourage students with that. Checking in regularly is also important. So asking just that really simple, are you okay? And offering ongoing support and continuing to just normalize that this is sensitive and upsetting content. And this is a big one for us, encouraging and practicing self-care. So we know that being involved in palliative care learning and clinical practice is very stressful, and that learning how to look after yourself is a key part of this content, and it's definitely included throughout our resources. And be a role model for your students. So talk about how you look after yourself in this kind of context. So we're going to have a little think and a talk now about one of the key PCC4U case studies, Michelle's story. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with Michelle's story, but I'll just give you a quick description for those who aren't. Michelle is a young mum who has terminal breast cancer. She had breast cancer 10 years previously and then has a recurrence of cancer. And we join Michelle's story where she's just going back to the doctor and then gets that very distressing news that she is now terminal. And if you put them all together, I think there's almost 30 minutes of video there of Michelle's journey as she goes down the palliative care road, and right up to the point where she's talking about things, the losses that she's experiencing, some spiritual conversations about meaning in life and purpose, and then a conversation with her family as they prepare for her death. So I personally found when I first viewed this material and did the learning module that it was very, I had strong emotional reactions, and I've heard from other educators that have looked at this who said, oh, I went through half a box of tissues while I was preparing my education for this. So, and I think, when I look at that and think about it, this is a very similar story to how, in terms of age and context and family situation, I can identify quite strongly with Michelle. And I think that's part of why I react strongly to her story. And you might feel the same way, or you might find that some of our other case studies are more triggering for you because of your personal experience and background. So we just wanted to put you into some smaller groups now in breakout rooms, and we want to give you an opportunity to just meet some other people who are also teaching palliative care and talk about a little bit about the ways that you support your students and how you help them to have a safe learning experience. So just to share some ideas, really. Linda, we might do 4 groups. Perfect. So you'll be in a group with people just at random. So you may not know each other, you may. But if you don't, please just take a moment to introduce yourselves before you dive into conversations around death and dying. We have set up the rooms so that there'll be probably 4 to 5 people in each room. And if you do encounter any problems, technical problems, there's a little button when you're in the room that says invite the host. And if you just click on that, Linda or I will come in and help you out with whatever you need. I think Linda's just shared some links there to Michelle's story in our learning resources. So if you did want to have a little quick look and refresh yourself, that would be good. So I think we will start those breakout rooms. Thanks, Linda. So hopefully you had some good conversations there and made some connections with people and got to share some of your experiences and ideas. So we just wanted to finish off our session today by giving you some information overview on the PCC4U resources that are available. So we've just got a short video clip to play which highlights that, and then we're going to have Kylie Ash just give us a brief bit of information about how we support educators in implementing our resources. So thanks, Linda. And I know some of you could see you scribbling down website addresses there. We can put those into the chat for you so you can just click on them and open them if that makes it a bit easier. And we'll also have them with our webinar resources. So Kylie, do you just want to tell us a little bit about how PCC4U supports implementation for educators?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Apologies, I haven't been able to be here for the whole of the webinar, but appreciate you taking time out of your busy days to join us. I think one of the key things with PCC4U is that it's all good and well to create these resources and the educational materials, but if the educators don't feel confident, and today was all about sort of exploring some of those feelings about how you feel about teaching in this palliative care context. But if you don't have the, I guess, the knowledge or skills of where to start with teaching palliative care, then the resources are just not going to be useful anyway. So one of the things that a couple of the approaches, and that video highlighted them, is we provide resources, hard copy resources that you are able to have tangibly in your hands to do some mapping and perhaps have a look through and identify areas that you may want to teach, because it's a huge suite of resources. I don't know if anyone's actually gone in through our website. I get some nods. It can be a bit overwhelming. Yeah, I get I get a big nod there. There's a lot there, and the intention is that you don't need to use all of it. It really is around cherry picking, and if you don't know where to start, that's where we come in with providing that either individual support. You can get on the phone and either myself or Linda will be there to actually talk you through the resources. One of the ways that I start a conversation is, okay, tell me what you're trying to achieve. Do you have some specific learning outcomes that you're trying to achieve? Do you have, what is a specific audience that we're trying to provide this information and education for? Do we have to match specific discipline understanding of the capabilities around palliative care? We've done a lot of that mapping already. We've mapped our palliative care capabilities to a number of the discipline capabilities. So we can clearly we've done a lot of that hard work. So we can say, okay, in your curriculum, if you're looking at a medical or social work program, we can say, actually, we can justify inclusion of palliative care or some of our concepts here. So that's one way. I've also worked with teams. So we actually set up a time to have a webinar with your teaching team. Often that's at a registered training organisation environment, but equally I've worked with a nursing academic team to actually talk through the resources, go through the graduate capabilities, what we're trying to, in our project, achieve, the achievement of the graduate capabilities, and how that works in your setting, and work with your actual team around that. And we also look at touching on some of the teaching and learning applications, because we've had a lot of learnings in the last 12 months, just from these webinars as well, listening to your experiences and the education experience. We've actually collated a wealth of understanding around some of the challenges around teaching this content. I'm not sure, sorry if you have touched on any of this today, but just even how to prepare students, and sometimes acknowledging that this is difficult content and how do you prepare them in the best way. Also the challenges around online learning and whether that's the best approach for this type of content. We've created some, pretty great infographics around what are some of the tips around online learning and online webinar delivery of this content. So we've got quite a repository there that we're open to sharing with educators to support you guys to build your confidence and knowledge and skills in this area, acknowledging that you're already professional educators and so forth. You bring all those skills. We just tweak some of that with what is the palliative care application in this and some of the learnings that we have. And we've got a great team as well with our learning and development coordinators now who can actually further support you as well in this. So that's the key elements. We also have the PACE app, and I think we've just flashed that on the screen, and I can see that Linda's popped that address in there as well. We also acknowledge that we're not the be all and end all of education in palliative care, and there's a huge number of other national palliative care projects that supply really reputable education resources. And that PACE app is a great one-stop shop where you're actually able to use the filters and navigation to actually identify what is the capability that you're trying to achieve here. Are there specific discipline groups that you're trying to find resources for? Do you want online or do you want face-to-face workshops or hard copy resources? Would you like this to be CPD relevant as well? So you can put all those filters into the app, push a button, search for a specific content area, perhaps maybe pain or various things, and that will spit out a result for you in terms of the resources that the National Palliative Care Projects would have available, and they're freely accessible through a link. So we don't house them all there, you can then access them. Well, I think that's probably a summary very quickly.
Thank you. That's great, Kylie. Thanks for that. And we just, I guess, wanted to wrap up our session by just going through a couple of our take-home messages. So I think we can tell from our conversations today that we know everyone feels a bit uncomfortable when talking about this topic at the start. We know that it's important to make sure that both you and your students have the support that you need to learn well in this space. As we've just said, there are lots of resources available for you to use, not just in our project, but in many other projects as well. And that we are definitely here to help and happy to get on the phone or Zoom and have a chat to you. So thank you so much for your time today. Before you go, we'd love it if you could do our feedback poll. It's just a few questions. Let us know how you found today's webinar session. We hope that it was helpful for you. And just a reminder that if you want to access webinar recordings and other resources afterwards, you can find our recordings and resources on our learning management system, which is palliativecareeducation.com.au. If you're not already on there, then you can just create a free account and sign up to our Educator Community Hub. And if you enroll in the 2022 webinars course, you will have access to all of those resources. Okay, so thank you so much for spending time with us today. We hope to be able to see you at our next webinar in March, where we'll be launching our Focus Top 2 toolkit.
And that's a really important one, I think, for a lot of you. That's a toolkit which is focusing on care of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And we're really excited to see that having launched. You can have a little sneak peek. It is actually already live on our website. And it really explores, it's coming from the perspective of knowing, being, doing framework, and really is going to, I think, improve the cultural responsiveness of health professionals in providing palliative care.
So thanks very much for joining us. We'll hopefully see you next time.